Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Teenage years can be a time of trial. It can be really difficult, but it can also be the most fun and the best years of your parenting.
Dr. Jessica Peck is a pediatric nurse practitioner as well as a professor, author, and mother of 4. Dr. Peck is host of the Dr. Nurse Mama Show, weekdays at 2 p.m. Central, and find her podcast at afr.net. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan speaking to reporters in Minneapolis this morning, where he discussed the recent collaboration with state and local officials during a federal immigration crackdown. Homan claiming they've been making progress since his talks with local and state officials last week, and he announced they would be pulling back agents due to the recent developments.
We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets. Unprecedented cooperation. As a result of the need for less law enforcement officers to do this work in a safer environment, I have announced effective immediately we will draw down 700 people effective today.
The American Society of Plastic Surgeons is now recommending that any gender manipulation procedures be delayed until a person turns 19. They are now the first major medical association to give guidance against procedures for minors. Plastic surgeon Dr. Sheila Nazarian says this is based on 14-year-old data out of Europe.
In the beginning, I actually thought they were doing the right thing. But when the European data came out and I approached one and I said, what about all this long-term data coming out of Europe? He said, what long-term data coming out of Europe? And at that point, I realized this is ideology-driven. It is money-driven. Hospital systems and physicians that do these surgeries have made a lot of money. And again, this should not be how we treat our patients, and especially not children. We are doctors first. How is this any different than research done on blood pressure medication or diabetes medication? This is a medical procedure, and it should be evidence-based driven, not ideology driven or what makes you feel like a morally superior person. Everything has to be done with evidence. It is a surgical, permanent, life-altering procedure.
Today is National Girls and Women in Sports Day, and in Maine, citizens could soon vote on whether men should be allowed to compete in women's sports. The organization Protect Girls Sports in Maine collected more than 82,000 signatures, 14,000 more than is needed to put a citizen initiative on the November ballot. Leland Striff is the lead petitioner of that group.
Huge win. Yeah, and to clarify on that too, you're right. We got 14,000 more than the threshold. The validation, though, is that we need over 67,000 validated signatures. We have already validated over 76,000. So while we got 82,000 and change overall, we are over 9,000 more validated signatures already by the towns. From 355 towns beyond what we actually need. And that is indicative of, I think, how Maine thinks about this. Mainers are common sense people. They understand that males should not be in female spaces. And I think that this is indicative of how the vote will go in November.
The Winter Olympics opening ceremony is Friday, and the world is getting ready to watch world-class skiers, hockey players, and curlers. But leave it to the Associated Press to stress over the fact that the athletes are overwhelmingly white. More from Steve Jordahl.
Woke may be on the way out, but it hasn't left the building just yet, as the Associated Press demonstrates in this video story.
Immigration from Africa and the Middle East is changing the demographics of Europe's top winter sports countries. But that hasn't really translated to their largely white rosters heading to the Milan Cortina Winter Olympics.
The AP is apparently upset that the liberal immigration policies that are widely being blamed for the downfall of Western Europe haven't borne fruit quickly enough in one Scandinavian country.
Team Sweden is almost entirely made up of ethnically Swedish athletes, which is hardly a reflection of the country's diversity, as Sweden has welcomed historic numbers of asylum seekers in recent decades.
Tim Graham of Media Research Center says the Winter Olympics is a stubborn holdover that's resisting critical race theory, or rather puts the lie to the Marxist trope.
If you want to obsess over race, you could pretty much show up at every Winter Olympics and say too many of the athletes are white.
And the reason, he says, is fairly obvious.
You know, they don't have downhill slalom slopes in Ethiopia.
Odd, he muses, that the diversity quotas don't bend the other way.
It's not like everybody shows up to the Olympic marathon and said there's not enough white folks in the marathon.
I'm Steve Jordahl.
U.S. stocks are drifting in mixed trading, while gold's price stabilized further and climbed back above $5,000 per ounce. For American Family News, I'm Rusty Peay.
The American Family Association's mission is to inform, equip, and activate individuals to strengthen the moral foundations of our culture. Our goal is to be a leading organization in biblical worldview training for cultural transformation. We stand on the biblical truth that all human beings, including the unborn, are created in the image of God and are endowed by Him with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
Thank you for standing with the American Family Association.
Welcome to today's issues. Join us for the next hour as we offer a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome, everybody, to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon today. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Ed.
And Tony Vitagliano comes in.
Good morning.
Off the bench, our utility infielder.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. And, folks, it is February 4th, and Fred, the weather has calmed down across the nation a little bit, right? We had the follow-up storm in the Carolinas after the big winter storm last weekend.
Yeah, the southeast, especially in this area of the country that had the ice storm. Now, we still have tens of thousands of people without power.
Repercussions,
So that is still a major problem. But the weather is warmer. We're living right now. I think temperature's going to get up in the 60s this week.
Yeah.
So that is great relief. Now, anybody listening up in Illinois or Wisconsin, they're probably saying, "Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Winter ain't over here."
Well, that's that's the kind of thing where I just say, "Well, that's your choice." Yeah, I mean, you know, it's kind of the same thing with Canada. And,
yes.
It's like summer here. You know,
yes.
It's like, oh.
It's true.
Yeah.
When people complain about July and August here down in the South,
mm-hmm.
and in Texas, it can be, you kind of know what you're getting into. So, all right. Well, lots going on. There was a big press conference this morning.
Yeah, just a couple of hours ago now. President Trump's border czar, Tom Homan, who has been in Minneapolis the last couple of weeks. The president assigned him there to try to bring the heat down.
De-escalate.
De-escalate, I think is the term that was used. So last week he held a news conference, said he had met with the governor of the state, Tim Walz. He had met with the mayor of Minneapolis, Jacob Fry. And in that news conference, Tom Homan said, I've had good meetings, productive meetings, but then within like 4 hours, both the governor and the mayor said, no deals yet. We still want ICE out of here. We think it's terrible what they're doing, et cetera, et cetera. So when I heard there was a news conference this morning with Tom Homan, I was kind of, okay, another one of those. But here's the announcement from Tom Homan. And we got a bit of the audio here, but basically he's talking about immediate drawdown of about a quarter of the immigration officers that are in Minneapolis in exchange for, he says, some confirmed cooperation from local authorities who are holding illegal immigrants in their jails. And basically they're going to give ICE some notification when these people are to be released so that ICE agents can go to the jail and do a peaceful arrest and follow up by deportation. Anyway, here's a little bit about what Tom Homan had to say at the news conference.
We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets. This is efficient, requires only 1 or 2 officers to assume custody of a criminal alien target, rather than 8 or 10 officers going into the community and arresting that public safety threat. This frees up more officers to arrest or remove criminal aliens. More officers taking custody of criminal aliens directly from the jails means less officers on the street doing criminal operations. This is smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement. And as a result of the need for less law enforcement officers to do this work in a safer environment, I have announced effective immediately, we will draw down 700 people effective today.
You know, Tony, this is a no-brainer. I don't know why it came to this, other than the fact that you have high-ranking political figures in Minnesota, including the Attorney General, Keith Ellison. We always mention Tim Walz, the governor of the state, and then Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis. There are other high-profile political figures in Minnesota who just seem to hate President Trump so much and hate the idea of sending illegal immigrants back to where they came from, that they would go to these lengths, because it's a no-brainer. If you already have an illegal immigrant in custody and they have committed some crime, and we're talking some of these are extremely serious and violent crimes, then you contact ICE and say, hey, we got them, rather than making ICE go to where the released criminal is now living and allowing protesters to come and create the havoc that we've seen. But this seems to be a no-brainer in a lot of places, a lot of states, a lot of cities. This is the way things are done. Yeah, we got this guy in custody. He's got 2 warrants for violent crime. We're calling in ICE. What is your interpretation of why it took all this time to get to this point?
Well, I think it took all this time because it accomplished, the Democrats have accomplished what they wanted to do in the court of public opinion, so to speak. You had the spectacle, you had the controversy, you had the tension, you had the violence, and unfortunately, you had the deaths. So Tim Walz, Ellison, the mayor, Jacob Fry, they were in no hurry to calm things down and to work with the federal agents while the pressure was being ramped up on ICE and while they had all eyes on Minneapolis and what was going on there. They just were in no hurry to work with the federal agents or to settle it down. And to me, if I'm looking at this press conference with Homan, I was discussing this with Fred before, to me, this looks a little bit like capitulation from the Trump administration. I get that they're saying, Homan is pumping up that we'll have this unprecedented cooperation with local authorities. Well, first of all, where were these authorities during the crisis? What guarantee do we really have that these authorities will continue to work with the federal agents when they weren't willing to work with the federal agents before, right? When they were just sitting there on the sidelines watching these protesters,
chaos,
Antifa people, assault federal agents. So I'm not 100%. To me, I think if I was Walz and the Democrats and their ilk, I would look at this as a victory. You're not going to get the same. You're not going to get the same progress on detaining these illegal immigrants with 700 less federal agents, and you're relying on the local authorities. I don't know. That's my interpretation. I think the Democrats will look at this as a win because you had some bloodshed. Like I said, just sad, tragic, but avoidable bloodshed. But that's what they were wanting. I mean, the pressure kept ramping up and ramping up. In my opinion, that's what they wanted.
Well, Fred, Tony makes a good point. I see no change in attitude on the part of Democratic leaders in Minnesota towards the issue of immigration and illegal immigration and whether these people should be allowed to stay. I also don't know what has shifted in the minds of the Democratic leaders with regards to concerns for the safety of actual citizens who fall prey a lot of times to the aggressive and violent criminal element within the illegal immigrant community. And they certainly don't care about the protesters, because they allowed things to ramp up to the place where people like Renee Good and Alex Peretti, I get the Peretti? Is that, I think I got the name right there. That they didn't care about what happened to those people either.
No.
So it is hard to figure why the sudden change in their attitude, if that is actually happened.
It's Alex Peretti.
Peretti? Okay.
Peretti.
Peretti. I think I get that mixed up with the Christian author.
Well, I think it was all about politics. I think what Tony had to say was exactly right. And what you're saying is that the radical Democrats who are running Minnesota right now, who are running the city of Minneapolis, really didn't care if people were injured. They hate Donald Trump so much. That is the bottom line in all of this. As we've said before on this program, this problem started with Joe Biden, a Democrat president, allowing 15 to 20 million people into this country. That is the source of this problem. And I wanted to play you a montage of other Democrat presidents who did exactly what Donald Trump has been striving to do since he was elected in 2024. And that's get a handle on all the violent, criminal, illegal aliens in this country.
So we're going to be listening to former presidents,
Barack Obama,
and presidential candidates,
Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton. You're going to hear
Chuck Schumer,
all of those voices who are now condemning President Trump. We're just as concerned as he is about what violent, illegal aliens were doing. Just have a listen to this little trip down memory lane, cut number 4.
Americans are right to demand better border security and better enforcement of the immigration laws.
We simply cannot allow people to pour into the United States undetected, undocumented, unchecked.
We've had 5 million undocumented workers come over the borders. It has become an extraordinary problem.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. And we must do more to stop it.
Biden, yes or no, would you allow the cities to ignore the federal law?
No.
Any city should listen to the Department of Homeland Security. The city made a mistake not to deport someone that the federal government strongly felt should be deported. Just because your child gets across the border, that doesn't mean the child gets to stay.
We do not think the comprehensive health care benefits should be extended to those who are undocumented workers and illegal aliens. We do not want to do anything to encourage more illegal immigration.
People say, well, why can't you stop illegal immigrants from coming here? And the number one answer we give is when they come here, they can get jobs, get benefits against the law because of fraud.
Illegal immigration is wrong, plain and simple.
Open borders. You're doing away with the concept of a nation state.
Our nation, like all nations, has the right and obligation to control its borders, and no matter how decent they are, no matter their reasons, the 11 million who broke these laws should be held accountable.
For decades, these weren't controversial or radical ideas. The only thing that changed is them.
Well, if your head is spinning after hearing all of those Democrats, almost you could say Donald Trump has been quoting them for the last 2 years. And yet, because they were Democrats, the mainstream media never challenged what they had to say.
I even heard Bernie Sanders in there saying, if you don't have a border, you don't have a nation state.
Sounds like the MAGA bench is deeper than we thought. Start pulling some of these ringers out to join us.
We do need to. Who produced that? That's obviously some kind of ad. Do you have that info?
I don't have that right now.
All right.
They tried to get the Sam Elliott sound alike
at the end.
At the end.
Yeah, I'm surprised it didn't say, in a world, that kind of, it had that kind of tone at the end. No, that's a great ad because they were saying what most normal people believe, but because I hate to keep saying this, but because of Trump derangement syndrome, these people on the Democratic side have lost their minds.
Yeah.
I mean, we actually had, wasn't it Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison who said after the church invasion that even churches are not immune to free speech, something like that.
Yep.
So they have gone into complete wackiness and lawlessness simply because it's Donald Trump behind this, to the extent that, I think Tim has mentioned, I'm in agreement with Tim's sentiments that none of us like the idea of ICE agents wearing masks. It's not a good look, but these people are protecting their families.
Yes.
Because the left is so unhinged.
Mm-hmm.
We know they would show up at the homes and probably the schools of these ICE agents and terrorize their families.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So,
well, we'll see where it goes from here because yesterday we had the budget bill that was passed, signed into law by the president last night. But in order to get that done, President Trump pressured Senate Republicans and House Republicans to agree to a Democrat demand that the portion of that funding bill that involved money for Homeland Security was cut out and treated separately. And so over the next 10 days, there's going to be a debate about that, about cutting funding, about, mandatory, take off those masks, all of those sorts of things. So the Democrats and Republicans were somewhat criticized to the point that Tony was making for compromising. Mm-hmm. And we had Republicans who actually voted with the Democrats on this. I think Susan Murray from Maine, she said she wanted ICE out of Maine. Republican.
Susan Collins,
yeah. Pardon me. Yeah. She wanted ICE out of Maine, and or she wasn't going to support it. So you have this battle that's going on right now, but I wanted to play that montage just to show the height of hypocrisy
it is
of what's going on.
And of course, now, Republicans can be hypocrites too, but the Democrats are clearly at the head of the pack when it comes to hypocrisy on this issue. By the way, I am nervous about this compromise that Republicans made regarding the government shutdown with the extension of spending, but the carve out of the conversation over funding for ICE and DHS more broadly for this reason. I do not put it past the Democrats. I understand no one wants a government shutdown. Democrats use it. If you're a conservative, you understand Democrats use government shutdowns as a weapon to try to get what they want. And Republicans, because of the mainstream media, they are usually the ones to cave. Tony, I am nervous about this because what if the Democrats say, you know what, we're not gonna fund ICE, and you can't stop us. I suppose it would be possible for the Republicans to add that funding back in when they decide to have a reconciliation bill. But I'm not sure the Democratic Party is operating in good faith here. Maybe they will. Maybe they will come to some sort of agreement on funding for Homeland Security and ICE in particular. But they haven't shown me a lot of good faith when it comes to these kinds of issues here over the last several years.
Yeah, I'm not sure how this is all going to shake out. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong. There are other departments that fall under the Department of Homeland Security, such as TSA, FEMA. So this is not. I'm not sure the Democrats will be able to get what they want, which is some type of targeted defunding of ICE while funding all the other parts of the Department of Homeland Security. My hope would be that Republicans wouldn't be that soft to give in to something as ridiculous as that. In which case the Republicans can kind of lever that back on to the Democrats and say, well, look, Democrats don't want to fund, Department of Homeland Security is TSA.
Right.
You really want to throw chaos back into the airport travel and air travel now. So, I'm not sure how it's all going to shake out. The Democrats, like I said, have accomplished what they wanted. They're getting their PR stunt right now. They get to look like they're taking a stand and they want actual reform. But we'll see how it actually plays out.
One of the most disturbing things was the invasion of that church during this.
Yeah.
And you didn't have a Democrat out there saying, you've gone too far, protesters.
Right.
No.
This is ridiculous.
No.
Now, some of those people have been charged, but I wanted to bring you up to date on that story. It's City's Church there in St. Paul.
This is the original church that was invaded.
Caleb Phillips, who is a member there, says the protesters, the anti-ICE protesters, are still outside intimidating members of that congregation. This past Sunday, they're still there doing this. I want you to hear from him, cut number 16.
This past Sunday, the first Sunday after everything happened, it was packed, even though it was only one of two services. There were also protesters outside the building. We had a police presence there, so that was helpful. Several people mentioned that they felt very safe, so that was really great to hear. But as we were coming out of church from a wonderful service that we had on Sunday, there are these protesters there, and it was almost like getting. I think I mentioned this to my girlfriend actually on our way home, but it was almost like getting out of a hot tub into like an ice bath. Just the safety and the peace and the joy that we were feeling in the church in our worship of Jesus Christ, going out and seeing people who are like spewing hatred towards us. And it made me feel sad for them. I would imagine that next Sunday, there's going to be a very similar presence. I don't know when it's going to end. I'm sure it will end eventually. But I would love for us to be the church that continues to not break under the pressure and continues to bless the people who curse us, no matter how often they're doing so.
Well, Tony, that's a very mature attitude for this young man. Fred, this is just a member. It's not a member of the pastoral staff.
No.
So it's in terms of the Christian faith, that's a very mature attitude, especially there at the end, blessing those who curse them.
Right.
I'm sure the protesters are probably on the sidewalk or they're in public space because the police are there trying to keep the peace. So there's probably no trespassing going on, but still, that is something I think that Christians are going to increasingly experience, at least in major cities for now, as the radical left continues its march towards a more chaotic environment. Their hostility is going to be revealed against Christians, especially Christians who stand for their particular beliefs on important political and social issues. So I'm not sure where you said this is City's Church is the name of it. I'm not sure how soon they'll get back to business as usual, but that at least is a proper Christian response to the pressure that's on that particular congregation.
Yeah, I agree. It was very measured. It was a biblical response. We always have to be careful as Christians not to let our feelings and emotions get in the way of how Christ said we should approach hostility from the world. After all, he said they hated me first.
Right.
So, I think Christians do need to recognize that, the levers of control of our culture and our society are not being pulled in our favor, in Christians' favor. The media didn't cover for the most of the media. When I say the media, I mean the mainstream media, the left media. They didn't cover that incident with the type of objective coverage that they should have. The Hollywood, obviously is not going to be sympathetic towards Christians at all.
Colleges and
universities. So we have to start expecting this type of behavior more and more, in my opinion, and to expect that you're not going to have the support from any type of powerful institutions. Honestly, you'll have the support of your local community, and obviously you have the support of your brothers and sisters in Christ all around the country and around the world. But we need to accept that this is just part of the territory.
And maybe that is a stepping stone to a more Christian America should revival come, that there's a price to pay in order to get from here to there. But certainly for the foreseeable future, that hostility is there, and it's not going away, and it may even grow. All right, we're going to take a short break, folks. Hope you will join us for more of today's issues.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
Many years ago, a national magazine carried a simple little story that touched the hearts of countless individuals. The story was about a little boy who wanted a dog, and more specifically, why he wanted a certain dog. It seems as though a fellow had several puppies which he had for sale. He and another gentleman were looking at the puppies, discussing which one of the puppies the gentleman should purchase. There were several puppies to choose from, but the fellow doing the selling warned the man about a certain puppy. See that puppy over there, he said. That one? Yeah, he's a cripple. You don't want him. The little boy was over near a fence and was listening to the two men talk while wishing as hard as he could that one of those puppies could be his. Very shortly, the man seeking to buy the puppy asked the price. "They're $10, the owner said. If the men had been looking, they would have seen the little boy counting his money. When he had counted it all, he discovered that he had only a total of $1.63. Now, that was a long way from the $10 necessary to buy a puppy. The young boy kept a close eye on the men as they moved around looking at each of the puppies. The owner explained the fine point of each of the puppies to the fellow seeking to buy one. And, of course, the two men completely ignored the cripple puppy. After a little while, the little boy asked the owner again what the price of the puppies was. "Son, didn't you hear me tell this gentleman that the puppies were $10 each? Why do you ask me again?" Well, the lad didn't say anything. He looked back down at his money and started counting. He hoped that by some miracle it would be $10, but he still had only $1.63. The fellow who had come to buy a puppy finally made a selection. The two of them took care of the necessary details to complete the deal. And as they were nearly finished, the lad asked the owner if he would take $1.63 down on one of the puppies and let him pay the rest on payments. Well, the owner didn't give him much of a satisfactory answer, but he did ask the lad which dog he wanted. "The one over there," the young boy said as he pointed. "But you heard me tell this fellow that the puppy is crippled. Why do you want him? All these other puppies are healthy. If you'll tell me why you want him, I just might give him to you," the owner concluded. Well, the little boy hesitated for a moment. Then he reached down and pulled up his pants leg. There on the young boy's leg was a brace. The boy was crippled. "I don't walk so good either, mister," he said, "and I reckon she'll need some understanding till she gets used to it." I did. The boy got his puppy without cost. I guess if you've been crucified, you can give some understanding when another gets crucified. I guess that's one reason he died for us. And I doubt that any of us have much use for a crucified man until we ourselves have been crucified.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
Don't let anyone look down on you because of your youth, but set an example for the believers in speech, in conduct, in love, in faith, and in purity. 1 Timothy 4:12.
This is today's issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of today's issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of today's issues.
And welcome back, everybody, to today's issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon today. I'm joined in studio by Fred Jackson and Tony Vitagliano. And now joining us, Abraham Hamilton III, General Counsel, host of the Hamilton Corner, heard weekdays at 5 p.m. Central Time on American Family Radio. Abe, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Okay, so we were talking, Fred set this up for Abe. I'm sure he was listening to the program. He had nothing else to do on the schedule. But I'd like to get his take on the Tom Homan press conference, and then we're going to talk to him, and folks, for you listening, we're going to talk some plastic surgery here, kind of a big moment in terms of the transgender debate. But let's start with the Tom Homan thing.
Yeah, so President Trump back a few weeks ago sent Tom Homan up to Minneapolis to see if he could settle things down up there. Homan had a news conference a few days later, and he said, you know, I've had good conversations with the governor, with the mayor of Minneapolis, and I'm optimistic that, you know, things are going to turn around, and nothing happened. So this morning I heard that Tom Homan was going to have another news conference, and I was a little bit skeptical as to what was going to come of that. But he did announce that immediately he is drawing down 700 of the roughly 3,000 ICE agents that are in Minneapolis, basically saying you can go home. And along with saying that, he said he now believes that he is going to get cooperation from local sheriffs who he's been meeting with. They are telling him that ICE is going to get notification as to when these bad guys are going to be released from these local jails so that ICE agents can come and pick them up. A couple of them come, put the guy in handcuffs, and then deport them. That was the announcement this morning.
Yeah, I think it's important every time Tom Homan's name comes up. I think it's important to remind people, because people don't know this, that Tom Homan was appointed as the Executive Associate Director of ICE, specifically over immigrations, enforcement, and removals, deportations, in 2013 under Barack Obama.
Yes.
He received the Presidential Rank Distinguished Medal of Service in 2015 from Barack Obama because he did such a stellar job at deporting illegal aliens. That's actually how President Trump learned about him, from his service under Barack Obama.
And we played, by the way, this last segment, clips from Democratic politicians, including several from Barack Obama, who sounded like Donald Trump, or vice versa.
Exactly right, but people don't know that, you know. So it's just absurd that how we are really in the midst of a propaganda war. Now, having said that, specifically concerning this drawdown, it just reveals what should have happened all along. I literally did this as a prosecutor. When I'm prosecuting criminal cases, when I get a new case, my investigator would run a background check and criminal history on a suspect, and one of the things we would look for to see whether or not there's any indication that this person is an illegal alien. If so, I would instruct my investigator to send a notice to ICE to say, hey, in the Harris County Jail, here's a guy who might be of interest to you. And at that point, I had nothing else to do. It would be the Fed's determination as to when, if and when, they would come to detain the guy. But it would be cooperation between local law enforcement and the federal law enforcement to enforce federal immigration law.
Well, now that seems like that's a boon to local law enforcement and to the justice system like in Minneapolis. Why wouldn't they? It seems like it would be great. One more case we do not have to deal with. Send them to the feds. That seems like it would be a help.
And it is exactly, if the objective is, the primary objective in terms of deportation procedures, is that we want to deport criminal illegal aliens, that are those illegal aliens who, in addition to the crime of entering our country illegally or remaining in our country illegally, who commit an additional crime in the United States of America. If that is the objective for everyone, what's the most efficient and safest way for the illegal alien and for the ICE officers and for the community for this to happen? Let them in the jails.
Yeah.
Let them in the jails. If you don't let ICE into the jails, you are then intentionally amplifying the circumstances. And in my view, I do believe the intentionality is directly proportional to all of the criminality in Minnesota. So all of the amplified rhetoric and the hostile circumstances have been amplified by local authorities, Jacob Fry and Tim Walz, because they have refused to allow ICE to go first into the jails, into the state prisons to remove people. They have intentionally ramped up the rhetoric. So this drawdown now really is a response to what should have been happening all along. It shouldn't have taken people having protests and confrontations in the street. It shouldn't have taken, these unfortunate losses of life that happen in the streets if the local elected officials and the local authorities let ISIS go into the jails first.
Well, because it's clearly simpler and safer to go when you already have someone in custody to turn them over to ICE. We made this point in the first segment, rather than send ICE agents to a place where this illegal immigrant criminal is living and allowing, family members to get into the way, where there's trying to stop ICE from taking Uncle, Harry or Jefe or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's simpler to.
I'm sure that was an Italian expression.
Well,
I was listening. I was like, is he going to go there? Is he going to do it?
Well, I figured somebody would say something anyway when I said Uncle Harry. So you need to, and so I just did it anyway. I pulled the trigger. All right, so yeah.
I'm sorry I derailed your thought.
No, listen. Yeah. It's that seems to be the simpler and safer way to handle this. You already have them in custody. Why let them back out on the street where money has to be spent? They have to track them down. They get themselves, and then with all the protesters who kind of glommed on to this process in order to exacerbate the tensions, just turn Uncle Harry over to ICE.
Yeah, and it's important for the listeners to know it was routine. It's not like it wasn't like it was an extravagant exercise. As a routine manner, and we say, hey, this one has an ICE hold.
Right.
This one has an ICE hold. This one has an ICE hold. It was a routine thing. The refusal to do so intentionally exacerbates the circumstance. And that's also what I want the listeners to be aware of. And they know that. It's not like they're not aware of this. They know that. The they I'm talking about is Jacob Fry and Tim Walz and others. They know that. It makes the circumstances far more dangerous for everyone who is involved.
Abe, am I being unfair if I was to say that Tim Walz and Jacob Fry and the Attorney General of the state, Keith Ellison, wanted this violence, wanted the cameras of the nation on this violence, and the media, they knew how the media was going to cooperate with them to show that what President Trump was trying to do to arrest these millions of people who have been allowed into this country illegally. Did they want this violence? Did they know, did they know their policy would create violence and make President Trump and the administration look bad?
I don't know what's in their hearts, but I am comfortable and confident in saying that it was predictable that their refusal to cooperate with ICE, specifically allowing access to the jails and to the prisons, would result in the potential for something to be news to glom onto that would divert attention away from things like, oh, I don't know, this is the place that had record numbers of immigration fraud. This is the place where you have quality leering centers. And if you have a 20-something-year-old Nick Shirley can take his iPhone and walk around and knock on the door and say, "Hey, any children in there?" And like, I don't. Surely, Jacob Fry and Tim Walz could have done that. It's interesting about 9 billion other monetary reasons to have attention in Minnesota diverted away from other things that are happening, just as subpoenas are being issued and being served on Tim Walz and his associates in his office and all of these things. Exactly. And this is like a rinse and repeat phenomenon. How many times before have we seen as negative attention is drawing down on some people who might be worthy of criminal charges, all of a sudden, oh man, the biggest story now is just the mean old big bad, very, very, very bad ICE doing very, very bad things in Minnesota.
Yeah,
it's pretty convenient.
And the perception that was pushed by the Democrats and by the media was that ICE wasn't going and arresting and detaining criminals who were guilty of, some of them, heinous crimes. It was, you would think that they were just going to get,
Uncle Harry
or Uncle Hefe, at the children's birthday party, who's just been here 20 years, and that's what they wanted you to think. And to me, some of the responsibility of how it happened does fall on the Trump administration's inability to communicate. Okay, no, this is what we cannot get these criminals because the local authorities are not keeping them detained enough for us to do this in a safe manner.
Yes. I think that is something that the Trump administration could have done better. Simply explain what the process is, explain the contrast between states that are not sanctuary states and cities that are not sanctuary cities, and how efficient and simple and safe the process is of identifying and detaining and removing illegal aliens who have committed additional crimes upon being on American soil. That is a messaging failure. But let's be honest about something. We're at the stage where the legacy media is pretty much the propaganda PR arm of the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
They are more than eager and willing to do their bidding. Like when you have stories when they're reporting, ICE detained a 5-year-old. They're big bad ICE, and they literally deny and omit from their coverage the fact that no, ICE was pursuing this little boy's father who has a criminal record in the United States of America, and upon viewing ICE coming to detain him, he takes off running, abandoning his own child.
Right.
And when ICE is doing a charitable humanitarian service in caring for this child in freezing temperatures, because otherwise, if they leave him there, it's a 5-year-old on the streets by themselves, wandering through the snow.
And ICE left him there.
ICE left him there.
That's what they would have said.
That's what they would have said in that regard, And so you can't win for losing with that. But that doesn't excuse the Trump administration from being able to be consistently on message and show the contrast. This is how this process is supposed to go. But we have opposition in Minnesota that seems to be intentionally seeking to inflame circumstances there, and they're willing to subjugate the Minnesotan people to additional criminality, all to advance their political agenda.
All right, Fred, next story. This is fascinating.
Abe, I'm sure last week you covered the story of this $2 million award that was given to, it was a young lady, detransitioner.
I covered it last night on the Hamilton Corner. Yes, in New York.
Tell us a little bit about that case.
Yeah, so it was a young lady who was 16 years old at the time. She's 22 now. Her name was Isabel. She went through various iterations of names, so she now goes by Fox Varian. And they had two people, a psychologist, Kenneth Einhorn, and a surgeon, Dr. Simon Chin, who both aided, encouraged, and moved this little girl to where they performed chest surgery. Removed her healthy breast tissue as when she's 16. She's now come to embrace her God-given identity, and she testified, her mom even testified, that I didn't want this to happen, but these doctors made me feel like my child was going to kill herself if I didn't consent to it. The trial reveals, and this is galling on a level that I have a hard time wrapping my mind and heart around. They testified that the psychologist and the surgeon testified at trial that they were completely unaware that this little girl had been telling people, even in the LGBTQ community, that she wasn't sure she wanted to identify as a boy. She wasn't sure she wanted to do so. There also was testimony that the psychologist never had one conversation with the surgeon about the little girl. Not one. Never had one conversation about her, but they were all too willing to cut off her healthy breast tissue. Well, after having heard all of the facts, the jury, interestingly, in New York State, awarded her $2 million, $1.6 million, the little girl who's now 22, $1.6 million for pain and suffering, and another $400,000 for additional medical expense, future medical expenses going forward. And it's interesting that now all of a sudden, plastic surgeons are saying, maybe we should be a little bit slower before we mutilate people's bodies irreparably.
Yes. Yeah. Well, to that point, the American Society of Plastic Surgeons issued a position statement, Abe, and this basically what they're saying. There should not be, we call these mutilation surgeries on any young person until they reach at least the age of 19. Because what they're finding out is that when they reach that age, some of the emotions that they may have had at
confusion,
these younger years, that they've changed their mind. They're a little bit more mature now. Fox this morning did an interview with Sheila Nazarian. She is a plastic surgeon. She's part of the American Society of Plastic Surgeons. She had something interesting to say about the possible motivation that's been going on in the medical community who've been carrying out these surgeries. Cut number 10.
In the beginning, I actually thought they were doing the right thing. But when the European data came out and I approached one and I said, what about all this long-term data coming out of Europe? He said, what long-term data coming out of Europe? And at that point, I realized this is ideology-driven. It is money-driven. Hospital systems and physicians that do these surgeries have made a lot of money. And again, this should not be how we treat our patients, and especially not children. We are doctors first. How is this any different than research done on blood pressure medication or diabetes medication? This is a medical procedure, and it should be evidence-based driven, not ideology-driven or what makes you feel like a morally superior person. Everything has to be done with evidence. It is a surgical, permanent, life-altering procedure.
You know, when she said that, my thoughts went back to, was 2 or 3 years ago when we have audio coming out of Vanderbilt, I believe it was.
I think that's right.
Where somebody
it was an internal meeting.
Yeah, somebody was caught on tape saying, yeah, if we do this surgery, it's about $40,000 that we get. And of course, it was totally denounced when that was made public. But it's shocking, I guess, Abe, when medical decisions would be made based on money.
Yeah. You know, and it's also kind of shocking that it's a revelatory for us as a society when you think, I don't know, maybe a 16-year-old may not be sure about something they want to do.
Right.
Like the idea, another part of the testimony that this, again, boggles my mind. The surgeon testified at trial that, we thought she was happy with the surgery after it was done initially, which brings to the forefront the problematic issue of the day. This is a medical procedure.
Right.
It shouldn't be determined based on, well, I hope you feel better about it.
Yeah, about yourself.
And about yourself after the fact. And to have, we don't allow children to do all kinds of things for the very same reasons. We don't allow children to get tattoos and things of that nature.
Well, I have a perfect example right here to my right.
I was wondering.
My son, when he was driving, living at home, his insurance was sky high. You know when it stopped being sky high? When he was 25 years old. That's the cutoff for auto insurance because, in their opinion, auto insurance, young men change so much when they get to their mid-20s. We can drop the amount we charge for their auto insurance. That's how much they talk about how long it takes for the male brain to mature and fully develop. My wife might have questions about whether at 67 that's happened to me. But that's based more on science than what these people have been doing.
And this is not from an entity that's bound with Hippocratic oaths.
Right.
You know,
Right.
they don't have a first do no harm posture.
Yeah.
You know, they're seeking the bottom line. And it's so sad to me that this is the case, that you have people and doctors who won't listen to reason, who won't even listen to science. Like the clip you just played, that you don't know anything about this data, but they're so ideologically driven that you have to go to sting them in the wallet. I had a basketball coach used to say, Abe, it's pain that stimulates the brain.
Yeah.
So these folks won't listen to reason, won't listen to science, won't listen to the wealth of human wisdom for millennia. Even the automobile insurance industry knows. Probably dealing with a young man, you probably need to wait until he's a little older because it'll be a less risky choice then. They won't listen to any of that. But now when you have a jury verdict that's monetary in nature, now all of a sudden you have, surgeons, cosmetic surgeons and others are saying, maybe we should slow down on our eagerness and willingness to do these.
All right.
Yeah, we just blew past boundary after boundary. It's amazing how fast this accelerated because first it started with accepting transgenderism in adults, right? You started there, and then you went on to, well, what if children have gender dysphoria? If children are confused about their gender, what about hormone treatment? We'll start with that. Then you just blew past that, and you go to these horrific life-altering surgeries. And now what you're seeing is, as you mentioned, the monetary cost is going to be felt. So now they're trying to roll it back. Even now, still, the Hill, I'm looking at, I was trying to find a few articles from the media on this decision that the ASPS made. Even now, the Hill and New York Times are still referring to the Plastic Surgeon Organization delaying gender-affirming surgery. They're still going to use that language until they're forced by society to roll this back in all of its language. They're still referring to it as gender-affirming surgery.
I'm sorry.
And they're still not, they haven't made a statement on hormone treatment. That's still something that they're going to hold on to. Hopefully we can see that also rolled back in this momentum.
Which is remarkable, and that is the very issue that the state of Tennessee passed a law to protect its minor citizens from. The surgeries as well as the hormone medication, and that is being considered by the Supreme Court. Oral arguments just took place right before the end of the year in 2025.
Yeah.
Like it's absurd to think, wait, we're really thinking about this? Like, you really want to invest money and to file a lawsuit to say that this shouldn't be done to children?
Right.
The prospect of irreparable harm and irreparable damage, you're not willing to concede that?
Right. So I said Tony's question was the last question. Let me slip one more under the door, okay? 20 years from now, let's say our country makes it. The republic is still in force. God has.
May it be so, Lord.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think people are going to say about this snapshot in time with just through the transgender issue? This kind of craziness, how idolatry, some of that too, mental health, those institutions so infected by ideology that they did this to kids.
Yeah.
What do you think? You think this will be looked at kind of like the satanic panic, those kinds of things that happened, whatever that was, 20, 25 years ago?
I would hope so, and I would hope that the medical industry would have to do things kind of like the legal industry has to do, like with continuing legal education all over the country, and attorneys, in order to maintain our licenses, we have to get ethical training annually. Because of historical instances of attorneys being shysters, frankly.
Yeah.
I hope and pray that this is something that the medical profession has to succumb to. I don't want to be cynical, because when you have, like Tony says, even in the face of this, and there are 28 additional lawsuits pending for detransitioners suing doctors and physicians for having these procedures performed on them when they're minors. But when you see pensions like that, gender affirming care language, all this type of language, in spite of the data that we have, in spite of the evidence we have from Europe, who's a decade ahead of us on this crazy train, well, they've decided, you know what, we're going to stop doing this to children. I hope there's a recalibration. But when you, with the kind of devotion, it reminds me of when the people surrounded Lot's house.
Oh, yeah.
And the Lord, through the angels, smote the men from the oldest to the youngest with blindness. And the Bible says, even after they're blind, they're still groping and clawing, trying to get to Lot's door.
Right. Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think we may see some iteration of that even 2 decades removed from the crazy moment that we're in currently.
Do you think all that we've been talking about, the case last week that we outlined, this, maybe we could see a change also in biological males being allowed to compete in female sports? Is it going to take a female athlete on a high school volleyball team to be seriously injured and a lawsuit in order for this to stop?
I think so, because unfortunately, to your point about the auto insurers, the insurance companies are more on the front line in terms of bearing the brunt of the risk. And what you're going to see happening is insurers are going to say, unless you doctors commit not to doing these types of things, we won't provide medical malpractice insurance for you.
Yeah.
And as that begins to be more normalized, you're going to find doctors start to say, well, I can't do these because in order to do this, my malpractice insurance is going to be sky high. So I have to agree not to do this on. So unfortunately, in our country, it's the pain that stimulates the brain. In this instance, is the money.
Yeah.
Well, and also, unfortunately, athletes generally have to sign a waiver. And then you have the burden of proof is on the injured girl to prove that this transgender, quote unquote, woman is because, quote unquote, she is really a man. That's the cause of the injury and not just the inherent risk of participating in athletics. That puts the burden on these poor girls. We are going to talk about, I think, another case here in terms of girls in sports and transgender girls. But the girls are the ones who are suffering not only from losing opportunities and scholarships and spots on the team, but also putting their health at risk. So,
yeah.
All right, Abraham Hamilton III has been our guest. You can hear him every weekday on AFR on the Hamilton Corner at 5 p.m. Central Time. Abe, any idea about what you're going to be talking about
Well, I
today?
have a couple different things that I'm considering, but I haven't landed that plane just yet. But you definitely want to tune in because you don't want to miss out.
5 p.m. Central Time. Thank you, Abe.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, folks, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Ed Vitagliano, Tony Vitagliano. We will be joined after our 5-minute break for news by Steve Paisley Jordahl. We hope you will join us. Again, 5-minute break for news, and we will be right back. You're listening to today's issues on AFR.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
They will thrust a cell phone in your face. If you ask a question, they'll surround you with cameras. They'll scream at you. They'll try to get you to commit violence. I believe God is giving us a little bit of a glimpse into what life without Him would be like.
A Disciple's View with Todd Herman. Critical information from a faith-enriching perspective. Weekdays at noon Central on AFR. This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. Ukraine and Russia beginning a second round of U.S. brokered peace talks in Abu Dhabi today, aimed at ending the almost 4-year war. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says for the first time, technical military teams from both countries are involved in the meetings, as well as Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. He's optimistic that a deal can be reached soon.
Our goal is to remain committed. We've committed a year to this. We think we've made real progress. If you look at the checklist of open items that existed at this time last year and the checklist of open items that remain now in terms of reaching a peace agreement between Ukraine and Russia, that list has been substantially diminished. That's the good news. The bad news is that the items that remain are the most difficult ones.
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent appears before the House Financial Services Committee for the annual hearing on the state of the financial system. Committee Chairman French Hill criticizes predictions of a recession and rising inflation as he praises how the Trump administration is handling the economy.
Under President Trump's leadership and Treasury Secretary Bessent's steady hand, the economy is back on track, reversing the damage of the previous administration.
This morning in Minneapolis, U.S. Border Czar Tom Homan discussed the collaboration with state and local officials during a federal immigration crackdown. Homan claiming they have been seeing an unprecedented amount of collaboration from local jails and allowing them to apprehend people, adding they are withdrawing 700 agents from the state due to these efforts. He also confirmed ICE will continue their targeted immigration operations.
ICE will conduct these operations and transnational criminal organization investigations with a focus on national security and public safety. I want to be clear. Just because you prioritize public safety threats don't mean we forget about everybody else. We will continue to enforce the immigration laws in this country.
A conservative columnist says the mobs in Minneapolis want to dissuade the federal government from enforcing our immigration laws and to distract from the huge Somali immigrant scandal. Chad Groening has more.
Robert Nye is a columnist for the Washington Times. His latest column is entitled, Twin Cities Turbulence is About More Than Immigration.
It's about overthrowing the duly elected American government. These people want to import millions of people. This tips the scales of elections, and not just because they are working to make them all citizens and let them vote. The census count in each state right now lists non-citizens and citizens and makes no distinction. And then congressional districts are allocated according to that.
And Knight revisited the story of former CNN newsman Don Lemon accompanying leftist protesters when they stormed into City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota during a Sunday service on January 19th.
We have charged Mr. Lemon and 3 other people under the FACE Act, which says you can't disrupt church services, among other things.
Knight says the Minnesota mobs have 2 objectives.
Trying to dissuade the federal government from enforcing our immigration laws, and I believe to distract from the huge scandal in Minnesota involving billions in welfare fraud, mostly in the Somali community.
Knight says if they win the midterms, Democrats have big plans. They should be taken seriously. I'm Chad Groening.
Deputies near Mobile, Alabama say a missing family is now considered to be in danger.
Neighbors in the town of Theodore, Alabama, called 911 Saturday when Aurelia Shokak missed work. No one had seen her or her 2 kids since the night before, and Mobile County Sheriff Paul Birch says deputies found troubling things.
It was blood throughout the house, but not large quantities of blood. There was obviously some kind of struggle based on the scene.
Deputies also found clothes strewn about and mattresses missing from beds. They even questioned an ex-boyfriend who is also the father of one of Shokak's children. He provided an alibi. Eben Brown, Fox News.
And finally, more freezing winter weather in the Midwest and South. Katie Byrne has more from Covington, Kentucky.
Parts of Ohio and Kentucky picked up 5 inches from this storm, with fast-moving snow squalls reducing visibility and making travel difficult at times. Last week's storm dumped nearly a foot of snow. And city officials say the biggest challenge right now is the bitter cold, keeping roads icy and dangerous.
For American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh.
AFA Stream is a resource for life-changing instruction and information, a source of wholesome entertainment and relaxation, plus access to some of your favorite AFA shows. You can watch a lot of content for free, or you can become a Great Commission partner. Then you'll not only open the door to everything AFA Stream has to offer, you'll get benefits like a subscription to The Stand and some really nice exclusives. Why not get started today? It's easy. Visit stream.afa.net.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Ed Vitagliano.
And welcome back to Today's Issues. Ed Vitagliano sitting in for Tim Wildmon today. Tim will be back in the captain's chair tomorrow. And as far as I know, also for Friday, for Trivia Friday. Always love for Tim to be on the show when we do trivia. He kind of drives the humor of that show, so he should be back tomorrow. Huh?
Not JJ?
Well, JJ and I'm just more kind of a counterpuncher. JJ and Tim will start the ruckus and I jump in. Okay, but Tim really kind of drives it, and JJ too with his storytelling and his jokes. So
JJ's pretty quiet. He didn't really say a whole lot in the show.
Yeah, it isn't really. None of us are quiet, but anyway, he should be back tomorrow. So Tony Vitagliano joins me in studio, and now Steve Paisley-Jordahl. Good morning / good afternoon to you, sir.
Good day, sir.
Good day, sir. All right. You do have a Paisley shirt on.
I do.
That's not false advertising. Oh. Is that new? That just seems it's almost got a Mexican feel to it with the color scheme.
I've worn it a couple times before.
Wow.
Okay.
But yeah.
You're still doing that.
What?
I'm offended again.
You're offended again?
Yeah, I'm again.
Sure.
Uncle Hefe. Jordahl's got a Mexican shirt on. I'm just on one today.
Yeah, that's right.
Tony's just jealous because I'm now your favorite.
Well, folks, listen, I would just, to defend myself here, I will just say I believe God put many cultures on the earth to bring something different and, something creative to the rest of the cultures to enjoy. That's the way we should approach it. So I like Mexican people, Tony. I'm not sure what you're really talking about.
I love taco salad. Taco salad is great.
It's the best.
I actually saw a post on my Twitter feed where somebody was this left-leaning liberal family decided to bring a Haitian immigrant family in and they're illegal and let them live with them, right?
Yeah.
So, and she was saying, I love having them here. She's a good cook, so it's like having a chef in the house.
Oh man.
Not taking advantage of them at all. No.
And her husband is very good.
That's crazy.
With
we
yard
just give
work.
them food and shelter, and they
they clean our bathrooms.
All right. Okay, folks, take your pick. All three of us probably offended somebody. So, all right, what's your first story, Steve? I think we need to get to something serious.
Talking about cultures, Speaker Mike Johnson was sitting in was taking a stroll through the Capitol the other day, and he was stopped by a reporter, and he was asked about border walls and what is a scriptural mandate for border? Because this reporter said to him, the left is always saying we're supposed to treat the immigrant as as ourselves. We're supposed to extend a hand and welcome them in. What's the thing about borders? So he decided to take the opportunity to go into a very thorough scriptural treatise on what borders and culture and national identity means. Let's listen to cut 3. And while we're listening to this, this is the screed that he put on his screed. It's a very well written treatise that he put up on his Twitter feed.
Now this is a little bit long, longer than we normally do, but
about 2 minutes.
We heard this morning in our story meeting. We thought it was excellent, so we want our listeners to hear it.
So this is cut 3.
Pope Leo has cited Matthew 25:35 to critique Donald Trump's mass deportation agenda. How would you respond to Pope Leo in Scripture?
So you want me to give you a theological dissertation? All right, I'll tell you what, I'll post it on my website later today, but let me give you a quick summary. Borders and walls are biblical. From the Old Testament to the New, God has allowed us to set up our civil societies and have separate nations. Immigration is not something that's frowned upon in Scripture. In fact, it's welcome. We're to welcome the sojourner and love our neighbor as ourselves. But what's also important in the Bible is that assimilation is expected and anticipated and proper. When someone comes into your country, comes into your nation, they do not have the right to change its laws or to change its society. They're expected to assimilate. We haven't had a lot of that going on. When people cite passages out of the Old Testament, they say, well, you're supposed to take care of the sojourner and the neighbor, treat them as yourself, welcome them in. Yes, but that is an admonition to individuals, not to the civil authorities. The civil authorities are given authority under Scripture to maintain order. Romans 12, you want to do this? Romans 13 says that the civil authorities are God's agents of wrath to bring punishment upon the wrongdoer. And it says if you do right, you have no fear of the civil authorities, but those civil authorities are necessary. It's a calling. It's a calling to maintain order in society, and we have not had that. When Biden and Harris opened the borders wide for 4 years, we had as many as 20 million illegals come across the country, and we all know many dangerous people, hardened criminals, child molesters, rapists, murderers, all the rest, terrorists who came into the country. We did not take care of our borders. Sovereign borders are biblical and good and right, and they're just, because it's not because we hate the people on the outside, it's because we love the people on the inside. We should love our neighbor as ourselves, as individuals, but as the civil authority and the government has to maintain the law. And that is biblical, and it's right, and it's just, and I'm happy to have this lengthy debate with anybody any time they want to, and I'll post on my X page the longer dissertation on that for you today, okay? Thank y'all so much.
Which he did.
Yeah, and that's what you handed
you.
to
You can
me.
go to his Twitter feed or his Facebook page or his campaign website. I believe it's all.
That's a great answer. By the way, at the end of the book of Revelation, the city of God, the New Jerusalem, comes down to earth. It has walls and doors, and there are people on the outside. So, to the speaker's point, there's nothing wrong with borders or walls. I would also note, too, that in ancient times, like when people are quoting from the Old Testament, it was common for people from different countries to go, they would travel on trade routes and go to big cities that were outside their country and in somebody else's country. So what God was saying is, as that happens, you are not to mistreat those people. But those people also went home after they were done trading, and they weren't allowed to come in and start worshiping idols. Right. They had to follow the kind of rules that were established in Israel. So, Tony, I'll toss this to you. It's unfortunate that Christian people, will take and I think misuse the passages that they're quoting for political purposes. I'm not saying that conservative Christians don't do that sometimes too, okay? But it is confusing to people when they're told, well, are you telling me the Bible is in favor of open borders for our country? That's simply not true. And Speaker Mike Johnson, or Spiker Johnson, Spiker Johnson.
Gets a little fiery, turns into Spiker Johnson.
That was a great off-the-cuff defense of a sane and wise policy on borders.
And I would even go a little bit further, and the example he said about inviting people as individuals, inviting people into your home and being generous there, which as believers we're called to be generous and to welcome those in need into our home, especially other believers. But if you just break that down a little bit further, I can invite someone into my home, which is being generous, and we share a meal with them, or even to stay, on a short term to help them, or if they're just passing through. But I expect at some point they will leave.
Yes.
And I expect when they're in my house, they won't start trying to change everything. They won't start rearranging the furniture, or start going through my entire pantry. And just clearing it out, or start looking for my wallet and taking some money. I need a little cash. Can I just take this cash? There's certain types of boundaries that you would expect, even inviting an individual into your home as being a generous believer. So why if you expect that certain boundaries, expect those boundaries in your personal home with visitors, why is it so crazy to also apply that to a social level, to a
community or a nation.
Community or a nation.
And listen, we go back to what we had Abraham Hamilton III on in the second segment. He was talking about Sodom and Gomorrah.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that Lot would not let the predatory homosexuals in his city into his house,
right?
Because they wanted to harm his visitors. Those are the two angelic beings. So it gets tricky if you want to start quoting the Old Testament. Lot said, "No, you can't come in.
Right?
I have a door and I'm locking it because you are coming in to do harm." I think the same thing is a valid way of viewing borders, as well as doors and locks in a home. It's valid to say, well, we may let some people in, but you can't come in because you're a drug runner, or you're a sex trafficker. You can't come in, or you're a criminal that's been released from prison in Venezuela and told that you can go up to the United States and have a free life. So I appreciate Speaker Mike Johnson. Good on you, Steve, finding that.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that the liberal and the actual, maybe even honest left that just says it's not fair that we have so much wealth in this country and others don't. Well, it's not, but we as citizens are participating in a social contract with our neighbors and our Constitution. It isn't fair. I can always look at somebody that lives across the street from me that has more money and a better car, and
that's not fair either.
It's not fair, but life isn't fair sometimes.
Right.
And you play the hand you're dealt. God gives much and expects much. So there's a whole economy, spiritual economy of living in a country like ours, where it does. God maybe expects me to do something different with my money and my income that He blesses me with because I live in a free country. The discussion never comes up in Africa and some of the poor countries in Africa. They don't have the responsibility that I have.
Right.
And but this is the economy that God, He puts us in certain positions for a reason, and we live and we participate in a social contract. And
well,
I don't think the left understands.
And let me just toss this in, and then we can move on. I am in full support as a Christian of a movement in this country. Once we get a lot of our own problems solved, it's not fair that the U.S. has so much. Instead of saying, well, let's invite our whole hemisphere here, let's work to make those economies more wealthy in terms of generating wealth, and help them develop their natural resources, not for us to consume them, but for them to be blessed by them. To me, I think that would be a Christian approach to viewing our own hemisphere.
Okay,
Start with the Caribbean. I
want to move on to a related story, if I may. And it's related because there's a migration that's happening within our own country. Harry Enton, the person who tracks polls at CNN, brought this up. And what they're finding out is that at the next census, the way that they're tracking people moving within this United States, red states are picking up people and blue states are losing people. And when they do the census the next time, it's going to be good for Republicans, red state, and it's going to be bad for blue states because no one wants to live in the blue states. Let's listen to cut 17.
According to the latest population estimates that take into account the population mid-2025, look at this. The biggest population growth this decade, all 5 of the states that Donald John Trump won in 2024. Texas, Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and of course the great state of Arizona, where I spent my New Year's Eve. I love those folks out in Prescott, Arizona. These were the biggest gainers in terms of population compared to the 2020 census. Now, it's not just a red state boom. This is what we're looking at. We're looking at a red state boom here, but it is not just a red state boom. We're also looking at what I would dare call a blue state depression, because who are the people? Who and where are the people moving from into the red states? Well, they're blue states. California, Harris's home state, New York, Illinois, New Jersey, and of course, the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, which is a bastion of blue liberalism. These are the states that folks in the United States are moving away from and into the red states, which is propelling a red state boom.
All right, now, but before I throw this over to Tony, is there any idea, and we didn't talk about this in the story meeting, so you may not know the answer to this. Is there any studies on this internal shift within the United States? Are these blue voters who are tired of the chaos of living in a socialist state, or are these disaffected red voters who happen to live in blue cities and blue states?
I have not seen the details on that. And
That
I
would
know
be
the reason it's
interesting.
important because the blue voters are going to bring their blue politics to the red states, and they're going to be the change agents trying to turn those red states blue. And this is, I think, my point, Tony, is when Democrats regain next, if like for example, Newsom is our president for God forbid, and they want to make the entire country into a blue state, there's going to be no place to go.
Yeah.
We're going to be stuck with those policies that are ruining the blue states. Ensign said that if things hold, Republican states will pick up 7 seats in electoral college
of the
votes of the census, and by contrast, the blue states will lose 7 seats.
Which would be pretty huge.
Yeah.
And could really change the makeup of the Senate, especially. Tony, what do you think about this? I know that, for example, in Massachusetts, I think 40% of the voting age population of Massachusetts, which when I was living in New Hampshire, we called Taxachusetts, okay, 40% are Republicans. There is not a single Republican district in the state of Massachusetts. So these blue states do have a lot of red voters. California has, I don't know, is a third or 35%, maybe 40% are Republican. They have no hopes of ever seeing a political change. They are also living in economic chaos a lot of times, some of these cities with the crime. They may just be escaping. It does make a big difference if these are blue voters, though, or red voters.
Yeah, I would. We talked about border security. I'm also for very strict state enforced borders. If you're coming from certain other states, we don't want you here. I'm very skeptical. Kind of like what Steve was talking about. I'm skeptical to see how many of these are actually voters who are tired of the policies and want to move to a different state to enjoy those policies that allow the state they're moving to be successful, versus bringing it's kind of the mantra of like socialism just hasn't been done right.
Yeah.
We got a few things wrong in Massachusetts, but I'm going to vote. I don't like Ron DeSantis in Florida, so I think we can get it right here. We can do things better here. We'll just have to see how this shakes out. I mean, we had the whole controversy of the gerrymandering, the move in Texas to redistrict, and then that was met with we're going to redistrict California,
right,
to kind of offset that. 2030 is a ways out, I would love for the projections to come to fruition, but we'll just have to see. Time will tell.
Yeah. The leftists are also looking at these polls and these statistics.
But they don't seem to be changing their policies to reflect maybe a healthier.
Yeah, this is a hill to die on, apparently. All these issues that make their state so unlivable. I say unlivable. Look, you lived in California.
I did.
California is an amazingly beautiful state. So much to do outdoors.
Yeah.
There's probably a substantial portion of the voting public there who go, you know what, eventually it's going to change. We used to have Arnold Schwarzenegger as governor. Eventually the pendulum will change and we won't be taxed to death. But I just can't leave California because it's so beautiful. Some of these blue states they have a lot going for them. Massachusetts is a beautiful state. The Boston area has a lot of great restaurants, a lot of historical things to see, great athletic traditions. It's hard for people to leave if they're just leaving for the kinds of things we're talking about. But it seems that some are.
My folks moved from California. And my sister and brother-in-law moved from California to Nashville specifically because they just couldn't take the politics anymore.
I know I do. I have a sister who lives in the Seattle area. Her and her husband are very conservative. And she's told me on a number of occasions, she said, as soon as her husband retires, I don't give names out, we are getting out of this crazy liberal. She said, I can't stand the liberal politics. So that has to be driving a lot of this because it's unusual. The traffic going in one direction is unusual. This is not a typical, hey, 5 moved out of Massachusetts and 5 moved in. This seems to be something else going on.
Yeah. Let's lighten the mood a little bit. I want to introduce you to 2 city council members from Memphis. Their names are Pearl Walker and Yolanda Cooper Sutton. Now, you know that we had in Memphis was very hard hit with that ice storm.
Yep. Fern.
Well, Yolanda and Pearl are of the decided event. They really believe that the snow that fell and the ice that fell in Memphis was fake.
What?
That's what they're saying. Council members Pearl Walker and Yolanda Cooper Sutton both publicly said the snow was artificial in different Facebook posts. They claim the snow is fake, and they're taking a little bit of heat for it.
Taking some heat for it?
Saying, yeah.
Do we? Please tell me we have them.
I don't.
Oh,
I know.
That would be so much fun.
That would be. I
hear them.
See if I can
hear them say this. So this is just posts on.
They're posts on their Facebook pages, social media posts, where they say they took some of this ice, they tried to light it on fire, and it turned black instead of melting into clean water. It's the different. You can have different water content in ice. It doesn't necessarily have to melt into water, but they are putting some conspiracy theories out there that actually, it wasn't real ice.
Well, now, Tony, I do recall a time. This is many, many years ago. When eating with family, this is back in your grandparents' house, and we popped open some of the ice cream cone, the drumstick things, and a couple folks didn't want to finish theirs. They threw it in a bowl in the middle, and we talked for hours, and they never melted.
Yeah.
Those were chemicals. What do you think about this? And then maybe these 2 city council members are onto something because I heard that birds aren't real.
Oh, yeah. Look, you know what? Sometimes I do hear from time to time stories where I'm like, you know what? Maybe since censorship, sometimes there's a point to be made there. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Look, you know me and Wesley.
Yeah.
We'll throw down with the
conspiracy
with the best of them. But the snow and the ice being fake, I don't know. I don't know if I can get behind that one.
Can I preview a little bit about what we're going to have tomorrow?
Sure.
I'm going to bring in some Maxine Waters because she told Scott Bessent, who was giving testimony today, to shut up in committee in here.
All right. listen, little Maxine Waters will just set your week. By the way, when I said birds aren't real, now that is an actual conspiracy theory.
That is.
Where people,
it was a fake conspiracy posited as a joke,
but it took off.
But it took off, and there was a whole merchandise and kind of social media following for a time.
Were these people? Did these people actually believe that birds had been replaced? I mean, people who believe the conspiracy theory.
I don't know if anybody actually believed it, but that was the details behind it. All birds had been replaced by drones. And
I just thought it was the craziest conspiracy that I'd ever heard until these two folks from Memphis.
the snow and ice isn't real.
Wait, this is breaking news from Babylon Bee. Breaking news from the Babylon Bee. The voter ID bill has been defeated in the Senate. The votes were 7 million to 53.
Well played, as usual, Babylon Bee. All right, folks, that's all. We're done. Today's issues. Hopefully, Lord willing, we'll see you right back here tomorrow. Thanks for listening.